Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. Um, Welcome to our next installment of knowledge management webinar. Today, we are going to cover content import best practices, and we'll also do a little bit of a recap about knowledge management V3. With me, I have Eyal Arasu. He is the development lead for knowledge management at ServiceNow. I am Sarup. I manage the product here at ServiceNow. We'll be doing a little bit about Knowledge V3. On content import, we are going to cover these topics: the what and the why, how to clean up content at the source itself, how to get ready for ServiceNow, and then export and import. And then briefly, we'll cover what our upcoming sessions are. So let's dive into it. So what is Knowledge V3? Starting Fuji release, which was mid of last year, we made some significant changes to the knowledge management application within ServiceNow. So much so that we call it as the next version, version 3 of knowledge. The changes are automated and mandatory as a part of the upgrade. So it's very important to understand what those changes are ideally prior to the upgrade. Understanding them will help you leverage those new capabilities as you upgrade, and then also smoothen the transition for your end users. So what are those features? With Fuji release, we started with multiple knowledge bases. So instead of having one large set of knowledge articles, we have multiple knowledge bases. The idea is around segregating the ownership of the knowledge bases, and so that an HR group can manage their own content, an IT group can manage their own content, such and such. And then each of those knowledge bases can have its own workflow for separate review and approval processes. Each knowledge base will also have its own set of categories. You may remember prior to Fuji, we supported a two-level classification system, topic and category. Now we have multiple levels of categories, and each knowledge base can have its own set of categories that you can associate content within that knowledge base to those categories. Also, we have introduced user criteria for access control with the Knowledge Management V3. User criteria is a means of enabling segregation of users based upon different parameters, let's say groups, departments, locations, and that allows you to have a better segmentation of your users and using those for access control. You can, this is in addition to the roles-based access that you already had with Knowledge Management V2. Additionally, in Geneva, we added a social Q&A. It's a means of having your end users try to help each other. They can post questions and get answers. These questions and answers are then indexable by the knowledge search engine, and then available as a way to augment your self-service and augment the content that you have. We also introduced the ability to import from Word. You can import a Word document, and that becomes an article within the knowledge base. You can import Word documents in bulk, so individually they will become different articles. We'll refer to this in a little bit during our content import discussion. So as you're upgrading to Knowledge V3, a few things to keep in mind. The automatic changes that we talked about. First thing, all the existing content that you have in your pre-Fuji knowledge base will get migrated to one single knowledge base called as the Knowledge KB, and that will house all of the content. What it typically means is that as you go through the process of migration, you may want to consider moving those articles from the Knowledge KB, which retains a lot of the features from Knowledge V2 into your other knowledge bases. As a part of the changes, you will also have a new article view page. Any customizations that you made in the prior to the upgrade, they are moved to a separate page called as KB View Customer, and you can migrate those changes as you want into the new page. Also, if you are using older browsers, typically the most impacted ones are Internet Explorer, lower versions of it, then you will be redirected to the older pages of Knowledge Management v2. Newer browsers automatically see the newer pages from Knowledge Management v3. Some of the best practices to keep in mind as you do your multi-KB structure, you might want to think about how you want to set up the access control, whether you want a particular knowledge base to be more restricted or more shared. Also, as I talked about earlier, ownership of the content within the knowledge base as to who manages, who creates, and those can be also managed. So planning ahead will help. We use user criteria instead of ACLs. So if you did any custom ACLs in your implementation for knowledge, then it's a good idea to take an inventory of all those ACLs, and as a part of the migration, convert those ACLs into user criteria. Typically, ACLs would use more user parameters, and those are also available to the user criteria, such as locations or geographies and as such. You can convert them into user criteria. Categories, like we mentioned, you can have a multi-level category hierarchy, no limitations. But from a usability perspective, we typically recommend 2 to 3 levels deep, because otherwise, if it is too many levels deep, then your users might get frustrated as they are navigating through that. Also, user criteria is implemented out of the box at the knowledge base level. So if you want to do access control at the article level, there is you can enable roles, which is hidden by default, or use business rules. We wrote a detailed blog about article level security. It's available on our community. If you are going this route, then highly recommended to review that article. Also, we wrote a blog about knowledge management v2 to v3 migration, again available on the community. It's a very good primer for you to for your journey from v2 to v3. One of the reasons we cover this in every webinar is we want to make sure that you have all the information on the migration. If you do have any further questions on the migration from v2 to v3, feel free to contact us, and we are happy to help. So moving on, the topic of the day for content import and what are the best practices. Let's start with what is content import, what are the scenarios when you do content import, and how to go about it. First of all, why would you do content import? Typically, the scenarios that we have noticed is you are new to ServiceNow, you're moving from another platform to ServiceNow, and you have the content in that platform, you want to move it to us, to our platform. So you would be doing a migration of your knowledge articles from that platform. In a merger and acquisition scenario, you would also be having content moving from other newer groups coming into your organization and moving them into your ServiceNow platform. Sometimes we have seen that there are multiple ServiceNow implementations in the whole organization, and then you're merging all of those into a single implementation. This is one area where you might be using a content import. Also, not directly related, but as you're upgrading from v2 to v3, some of our customers have used that as an opportunity to apply some of the principles that we're talking about, like cleaning up at source, and using that opportunity to migrate the content into a better format. More on that coming up. Like I said, planning will help. First of all, if you are planning to clean up your content, then you might need to organize for your resources who will be doing the cleanup of the content. So planning around that will definitely help. Also, as you move the content into the ServiceNow platform, there are a few things that you want to keep in mind, specifically around some of the features that are available in v3 and how you can leverage those features. So planning your content export will help in making it aligned with the way the ServiceNow platform is available for you. If you are not planning to do a content import into a new system, search at source is an option. So the idea would be that you index the content from the existing source and search from ServiceNow. We wrote a blog very recently about it on the community. You may want to check that out, how to do that. What you will typically do is you will review the use of that external content that you are indexing and bringing it into your ServiceNow search. And idea that we would recommend is that in long term, if there is high value content, bring it over. Then you are able to manage that content, the update of that content, and the ownership of the content in ServiceNow, leveraging the workflow and the capabilities that you will have within ServiceNow. So while you are searching at source, long term, you may want to migrate the high value content. So cleaning at source, this is something that I cannot emphasize enough. We recommend strongly that as you are importing content, you bring in the right set of content into your ServiceNow implementation. Typically, what we would recommend is you review the usage reports from your current source, determine what the valuable content is. If something hasn't been used for months or years, there is no point in bringing it over. So look at the usage reports. Also, you can contact the content owners or the domain experts around that content, find out the content that is no longer relevant, maybe something that is for an older version of the product that has already been decommissioned. So things like that, review the content, weed it out so that you are bringing in only the relevant content. You can use the opportunity to reformat your content. Sometimes, over time, multiple owners have come in and different content has been written in different formats. So you can use a consistent template, modify the content into a consistent template as you bring it over. It will help in the readability of the content. Another thing that we notice is people tend to add on to an article forever and ever, and then you have long, large articles. From a usability perspective and easier consumption, it's a very good idea to break your articles into smaller articles. Why am I mentioning this now? Because as you move from an existing system to ServiceNow, doing it at the source will help it getting done faster because your users are used to the system. They will know the nuances of the system, so they can format and do the content reorganization and reformatting much easier on the current system. So once you do that at the source, then we talk about the next step. So the next step here is getting ready for ServiceNow. So we introduced these concepts in a little bit in the Knowledge V3 discussion earlier on here. So you typically want to segregate your content based upon the ownership of the content. So if different groups are owning that content, let's say security versus operations have different set of content, then you want to create separate knowledge bases. So even when you are importing the content, you want to import them into separate knowledge bases. So planning them out and having separate ownership will help. Defining the security model ahead of time is also beneficial. Then you can import the content into the right security levels from the get-go. User criteria is what we use to manage security. As you migrate, you can also organize your content into a taxonomy. Defining the taxonomy ahead of time on the ServiceNow system, and then as a part of the import, assigning the taxonomy assigning the categories is a great idea. Review and approval processes. Every system has its own nuances. We believe we have a very strong workflow capability. So defining your workflow ahead of time and then organizing your content as per the workflow will help. And planning all of these avoids having last-minute headaches and changes. So getting ready ahead of time, planning on these areas will help smoothen the process. So what about the export and import? So the preferred export formats, and it all depends upon your current system what it can allow. You would prefer that the content is available either as an XML, CSV, separated values, Excel, Microsoft Excel, or Microsoft Word. These are formats that we usually work with pretty well. About import, So we have a concept of import sets. You can import content using CSV or XLS in as from an import set. Also, like we referred to earlier, we can do bulk import from Word documents. So you can get all the Word documents, all the content from your existing source into Word documents, and then import them. And as you import them, you can assign the knowledge base and the category and as such. There are certain nuances with what works with Word, and we are in the process of publishing a blog that will allow you to understand what formats and that will work for your Word document. A lot of our customers have also used our APIs and developed some custom code. And what they do is they would write an custom code that fetches the content real time from the existing system, do some transformation, and then using our incredibly powerful APIs to insert the content into ServiceNow. That's one way to go about your import if you have a lot of transformation to do. After the import, these are very important steps. It's rarely a smooth ride all the time with import. So, doing this in your dev environment is definitely what we would recommend first. But review the content review the content for formatting in the view mode. Look for all the HTML and all that if it's looking up fine or not. And then most importantly, test your search. After the content has been imported, make sure that the search is showing all the content properly. We have covered in great detail about search in previous webinars as well as in blogs. One of the ways is to add meta to improve your searchability of the content. So you may want to think about that as well. So in general, if you have gotten the content cleaned up, if you have planned ahead and set up the knowledge structure in ServiceNow, and then followed through on the process, you will have a very smooth content import. And we are more than happy to help with any technical details that you might need or step-by-step details that you might need about exporting and importing content. You can reach out to us for those details. So moving on, that was all about content import. In our upcoming discussions, we will be doing knowledge governance. We'll talk about reporting, customizing the home page, and suggestions from you. We keep on updating what that special topics are based upon all the encouraging feedback that you have given us and what topics you want us to cover. So keep on providing those to us, and we'll try and keep up with all the requests. So that is it for today. So we encourage you to provide any questions that you have on the community. That helps others to also take a look at those questions. We will try and be very prompt with our answers on these. Do we have any live questions today, Lisa?
Currently, not on the Q&A here on the broadcast, and I'm still refreshing the thread on the community, but at the moment I don't see a question yet.
Cool. So we are always available for your questions. Like I said a few minutes back, please feel free to post them on the community. We'll try to answer them, and our community has a lot of good advocates and experts out there who are very prompt about answering them as well. So appreciate all the warm feedback that we have received so far on our webinars. We'll continue to do so. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.